Hello everyone, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to Live It Up, the show where we explore and discuss how to take your life to that next level and beyond. We cover health, wealth, relationships, and how to create a life you absolutely love. I'm your host and coach, Fletcher Ellingson. Amy will be joining us in a bit as we discuss the fascinating topic of the placebo effect. We'll get into what it is and is this an actual phenomenon? There's some surprising information on placebo, so stick around. Before we get to that, I want to remind you that if you have questions that you would like us to answer on or off the air, you can email them directly to me at fletcher@fletcherellingson.com. Now let's get to today's email. It says, Fletcher, my wife and I have the same arguments about the same things over and over and over again. I'm sick of it. We're not in danger of separating or anything like that. We're committed, but we're both tired of having the same arguments that we've been having now for 17 years. I can't believe it's been that long. Crazy. What do you suggest? Signed, Running in Circles. Hey, Running in Circles, I acknowledge you for reaching out. That's always a sign of strength. I want you to consider your favorite sports team. Or if you don't have one, just play along. If the coach had that team run the same two plays over and over again, what do you think would happen? What kind of results would they get? It's pretty obvious, isn't it? They would get the same results over and over and over and over again. And they would be losing way more than winning because the other teams they'd know all their plays. In fact, they would know how to get ready for them, probably could predict them or even force the plays. You see, you and your wife have been running the same plays over and over and over again, and surprise, surprise, you're getting the same results. Like you said, it feels crazy and like you're running in circles. In fact, I'll bet you two can even finish each other's sentences and predict how the other is going to react. Now, you said this has been going on for about 17 years. I want you to consider how much time, how much life energy has been spent running these same plays over and over again only to get the same results. It can be a bit disappointing to do the math on that, but I want you to do the math because it's going to be fuel to further motivate you to come up with some new plays. So let me break this down for you so you can begin implementing new actions. You two have these patterns and they're hardwired in your brains. They're activated anytime certain topics come up and what or how you say things. Even how you stand, how you breathe, and what you imagine and focus on it's always the same. So, in order to get new results, you have to interrupt the pattern of your communication. To interrupt a pattern, you have to change at least two of the things that I mentioned previously. You have to change your focus. You have to change your physiology, meaning the way you're standing or what you're doing with your body. Or you have to change your physical location or your language. Now, how do you do this, though, when you fall into the pattern and you're both going at each other, right? Well, you wrote in, so I'm going to put that on you. You're going to have to figure out a way. You're going to have to come up with a plan that you both can agree to how to interrupt those patterns. Now, you have to be responsible for your actions. So you have to be willing to interrupt the patterns and do something so it's hard to get back to the old pattern. One way to do this is ask a critical question. You can both ask each other, hey, wait a second, what do we want our outcome to be from this conversation? Right? We're getting caught up in the same old conversation. What do we actually want our outcome to be? Do we want to be right or do we want to come to a workable solution? Do we want to feel closer or divided? So you see, if you know your outcome and you both want it, then you'll have a greater chance of arriving at a new outcome. Listen, listening is so important, but listen without defending or trying to be right. Instead, listen in a way so she feels you understand. Reflect back to her what she said and don't add your opinions. Would that be a different play? Absolutely. Listen with the intent of understanding, and so the other person feels heard. Offer to try it her way. This may also be a new way, a new play, right? Offer to do it her way. But if it really doesn't hurt anything other than your pride, try it her way. What happens if you give up some control? Treat it as an experiment. Take a break and change your emotional state. What I mean by this is, I'll give you an example. Sometimes when we drive over to Seattle, over the passes, you can get in that, you can get in a zone where you begin tired, you get kind of hypnotized, right, as you're driving. Well, sometimes we take a break. We'll pull over to the side of the road, we'll get out, we'll get some fresh air, stretch, we'll even jump around or run around, do some jumping jacks, and that interrupts the pattern. You suddenly feel more energized, so you can get back in the car and feel more alert, okay? Now, I want to remind you that all we are is a collection of our patterns and what we focus on. It's little more than that. Your habits and what you focus on make up your life. So really look at them. Increase your awareness around what they are, and you'll be able to transform this area of your life. It's entirely possible. I have seen people take control of their focus and patterns, and as a result, they've been able to reverse chronic disease. They've been able to kick addiction. They've been able to create wealth and mend relationships. Yes, it takes time and it takes practice. But you can do this, and I believe in you. Stick around as we bring Amy on to talk about the placebo effect. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Live It Up. We have Amy with us. Hey,
Hello,
Amy.
I'm here.
Hi. Hey, we're talking about the placebo effect today. It's pretty cool stuff. You've given me some previews of it as to what you're going to be talking about. But tell everybody, what is a placebo effect?
So the placebo is really anything that seems to be a real medical treatment, but isn't. So it could be a pill, a shot, or some other type of sham treatment, like a surgery.
Sham treatment.
A sham treatment, yeah, it's not really a treatment. So what all placebos have in common is that they don't contain any active medicine or any intervention that is supposed to affect the body. Placebos are mostly used in medicine when they're looking at how well another treatment is working or medicine is working, because you need to have a control group, right? So you give someone a pill, and then you give the other group a placebo pill, and so then they've been able to get all kinds of interesting data because you have all these placebo arms of trials. So the placebo is when you give someone something that's not supposed to do anything, but then they have a physical reaction.
Yeah, and it could be favorable or not favorable, right?
Correct, right.
So I've also heard the word nocebo. What's that?
Yeah, so that's, I mean, you really could say placebo, but nocebo is when someone has an unpleasant side effect. Okay. So something that they're taking that's a placebo, but they have an unpleasant side effect.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. So, all right, explain this, break it down for us. How does all this work?
So, I mean, we don't understand exactly, but like most things that we experience, the placebo effect starts in their brain. So
everything's about the brain.
Everything. I mean, the brain is just like the captain of the whole thing.
Yeah.
You know, it just controls everything. So, and that helps us even make sense. A lot of the times, what we see a lot of placebo effect in when you do studies that are looking at, or when something is affecting the brain. Or the brain's involved, sorry, like fatigue, nausea, depression, pain. Those are some big ones that respond to placebo because the brain's heavily involved. Mm-hmm. I mean, your brain controls your entire physical experience because your brain is so involved in what your body releases, the chemicals, the hormones it releases. So when you, in studies even looking at placebo pain relief, when they've done imaging studies, those areas of the brain actually light up. Just like you've received a pain medication, and it's just the brain is so powerful because it controls all those chemicals. And so when people, if you believe something works, mm-hmm. that's what's really going to help this, and that's why sometimes the larger the sham is, the greater the placebo effect, because you actually believe in it so much. Even like on a subconscious level, you believe it's all happening. So a lot of the placebo effect will take into, or the result is based on the expectations of the person receiving the placebo, whatever it may be, what they believe about the treatment, the substance, or about the doctor giving it to them. It wouldn't work if you're like, hey, I want to lose weight, so I'm going to take this made-up pill. It doesn't work like that. You have to really, really believe at a very subconscious level that it's going to work.
Right, and just for a point of clarification, an obvious one, they don't know it's a placebo. They think it's a real...
In the studies, yeah, they don't know it's a placebo.
Right.
Actually, there was one study that actually they did know it was a placebo. This is this researcher at Harvard, and they still had effects. I mean, it's just so funny, but...
All right, so what conditions has the placebo effect been seen?
So it's been shown in almost everything, but so depression, pain, sleep disorders, irritable bowel syndrome, menopause, erectile dysfunction.
Wow.
The ability to reduce pain is called placebo analgesia, and it's believed to work in a couple of different ways. Either the placebo effect, whether, this belief, it either initiates the result of natural painkillers called endorphins. So it actually has your brain release endorphins, or it just changes your perception of the pain when we're not totally sure which one it does. And then even if you were to take a pain medication and really, really believe it's going to work, it works better than if you don't believe it's going to work. So the belief in the pain medication helps. And then they've even shown that how a person gets it, like an injection is going to be more effective than a pill, even if the pill maybe had more pain medication in it, because we believe that somehow the injection is going to be stronger.
Yeah.
So that sense of belief.
I would probably fall for that.
Yeah, you probably would.
Yeah.
And then depression, because again, antidepressants, the way they work is they increase by this mechanism the amount of serotonin that's actively working in your brain. So we really have our own pharmacies inside our brain, and a lot of the medications we take and we use just help increase those chemicals in our brain. So placebo effect is really large in antidepressant studies, which would make sense because you believe it's going to work, and then you have this increase in serotonin. Erectile dysfunction, they looked at two groups. One was, they basically, one was given placebo, one was given, or they told they were going to get either a placebo or actual, and then there was one group that was told they were just getting placebo, and all three groups were actually given placebo, and they all had improvement.
Wow.
So, I mean, just that our brain messes with everything. It's almost like, in when they talk about what is it with physics, where you change the experiment just by observing the experiment.
Right.
I can't remember but anyway. So the same kind of thing happens as soon as our brain gets involved. It changes everything.
Wow. So all three were given a placebo.
Yeah, and one even knew they were getting a placebo, but they still had improvement in erection.
Wow.
Yeah.
Impressive. Well, we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and talk more about the placebo effect. Stay with us. Hey everybody, welcome back to Live It Up. We're here with Amy. We're talking about
Placebo.
the placebo effect. All right. There are some really cool studies that you shared with me and you're going to share here using the placebo effect. Talk about those and share some of those with us.
Yeah, and they were kind of interesting when I started reading about them, and I was actually trying to find more information about the ones that I'd heard about with Parkinson's, and almost all the articles I found were all about the ethics of it, because it sparked a lot of ethical debate. Because when you're talking about a brain surgery, then the question is, so what they did basically, this one study, the actual intervention, they were implanting fetal cells into a portion of the brain to see if it helped improve Parkinson's symptoms. But in order to have a control group, they did a sham surgery, a sham brain surgery on the control group. And because if you don't have the control group, you don't really know, if your intervention, you don't know how much it worked. So what they found is that the majority of the people in the sham group actually saw improvement as well. And so
that's wild.
It's so wild. And you know what's interesting is I think some people feel like, well, people were duped or something, and I don't really think that wasn't their intention. It's just that you have to have this control group. And the thing that's so interesting is you couldn't, then you think, well, how can you kind of harness the placebo effect? But those people with the sham surgery, they had the appointment, the pre-op, they were in the hospital, they got, they had numbing medicine, they had so many things that affected their subconscious to create that very certain belief that they had the surgery. So like you even talk about in your coaching, it's like if you create the sense of certainty, then you have this belief. And it's hard to create that. You can't know that you're having a sham and then have that belief.
Right.
Anyway, so that was one of them. They also, this Harvard researcher, they did placebo pills or sham acupuncture. And they were given the pills or the acupuncture, and they were consented on the possible side effects of each treatment. And of those receiving the placebo, so they actually didn't receive any medicine. It was either a placebo pill or sham acupuncture. And so both groups had nothing that would have done anything, but they were consented on the potential side effects of both the acupuncture and the placebo pills. So 25% of the acupuncture group had the side effects, the sham acupuncture, and 31% of the people receiving the placebo pills had the side effects that they were consented on.
So both groups had sham placebos, or they had placebos, and experienced side effects.
Yeah, so a quarter of the sham acupuncture and a third of the pills, sham pills, received the side effects that they were specifically consented on.
Wow.
And so it's just that, I know that even some of my patients will say, like, I didn't read the insert on the pills. And on the one hand, I want them to read the insert, but I'd want them maybe to only read the most common effects, or the dangerous ones. But sometimes it's best just to tell them the main things to worry about and then to not read the insert, because there's so many things on there, and then they potentially have effect that they don't really weren't really having.
Yeah.
So like I mentioned even earlier, having a procedure is going to increase the effect of the placebo. So a review of looking at 55 studies, looking at studies that involved sham procedures, and if there was some sort of skin penetration or entering the body in some way, because they've also done sham surgeries for arthritis of the knee, and that also showed a really significant improvement in patients that actually did not have any intervention, but they thought that their arthritis was kind of cleaned up, and they really believed something happened, and they actually had improvement. So anyway, looking at those studies, if it was a pain-related condition and they actually had surgical intervention, there was a 78% improvement compared to actual treatment. So if the surgery gave you, and not that the surgery did, but say the surgery gave you 100%, sham surgery gave you 78% improvement.
Wow.
So it was just a huge improvement in surgeries related for pain with sham intervention.
Wow.
I know.
Just think if you just had a sham one, you could sign up for a sham one.
I know,
and save all those costs.
Except for, I think the sham one would be, it'd be less expensive because they would basically put you to sleep and wake you up, and they would have done nothing. But so maybe it'd be a little bit less expensive. But then that's where the ethics comes in.
Right.
Right.
But all these people have consented to.
Well, yeah, but if you did sham on everybody, that would be an ethical issue.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. So why do we think people respond to placebo? What is happening to create that in the body?
So we don't understand exactly. Like I mentioned before, it seems to originate in the brain. So this belief is that this is what's supposed to happen, and then it releases the signals, or the brain then signals the rest of the body that this is what's supposed to happen. So like they did a study, and they were given a placebo, and the people were told it was a stimulant. And after taking it, literally their heart rate and their blood pressure went up. So it's not like it's not happening. It literally, there's something that happens in our body based on our belief. There are people that are given a pill that would told them that would help them sleep, and then they would feel like it would, then they would have an improvement in sleep. So the placebo effect is really tied to the expectations, and it doesn't make it imaginary or fake, because there's actually these physical occurrences, or they've even actually measured the body's production of endorphins with this placebo pain relief, and there's an increase in endorphins, so your brain's actually releasing them.
And it makes me consider a lot of people's beliefs around what the body can do to heal itself, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of religions and people who are not religious who subscribe to that. Like, your body has the ability to heal itself. And this kind of gives evidence to that.
It does, and I think the question is how to harness that, because you don't want people who have cancer to go off and do something that's not going to help them. But you're given the fact that your cells are always repairing and always turning over. If you could harness it, it'd be very powerful. Yeah.
So are there things that people can do to make the placebo effect even stronger?
Well, the more the person believes in it, the more like it's going to help. So say even if you were to take zinc to prevent getting a cold, you know, if that person really, really, really believes that zinc is going to help them, it's going to be more likely to help them not get that cold. They've even done studies that look at the color of the pill, like red, yellow, and orange placebo pills seem to give people more stimulating effects, and green ones and blue ones tend to make people more calm. These are all placebo. Larger pills tend to have a stronger placebo effect than smaller pills. There was a cool magazine article where a man, he was creating your own placebo pill, and so it's like, I want the pill to be gold, and I want it to be a capsule, and you create this belief that this placebo pill is going to do something for you, and you can create like your own placebo pill.
Wow.
Which is kind of a funny idea.
And that sounds crazy, but it certainly could work for people.
Yeah, it could. Yeah.
Wow.
And like I mentioned, like an injection would be stronger than a pill. If there's a cut in the skin, it's going to be, you know, more likely to do something than not.
Yeah, and I assume that if you see it work on somebody else, that would be evidence too. It kind of reminds me of when our kids are really small and they get a scrape and they're crying, and you can fix it with a kiss.
Yeah.
You know, like
or a Band-Aid.
Or a Band-Aid.
Like they're obsessed with Band-Aids.
Yeah, and suddenly it could be the most terrible pain, but as soon as you've kissed it or put that Band-Aid on it, they're done.
Yeah, I know one of my daughters, I remember crying in the middle of the night. She was crying so hard her ear hurt. She was like 4. And she was just crying for a Band-Aid for her ear. And I'm like, well, I didn't really know what to do with that. So I put the Band-Aid like over her ear, and she went back to sleep. And the next day I took her to the office and I looked in her ear, and her eardrum looked terrible. But she was no longer in any pain, which was so funny.
The placebo Band-Aid.
The Band-Aid, yeah.
I love it. Okay, last question. Do you know of any doctors that actually prescribe placebo pills or treatments?
Yeah, I don't know of any. I know, like I mentioned, at Harvard, they're doing some research. There was a doctor not too long ago that was really big into placebos, and he even said he was, but he actually got in trouble because of the ethical nature of it. So I don't think it's ethically okay to give your patient, you know, cornstarch pills and tell them it's going to do something, you know, that it's not. But I definitely know doctors, and probably myself included, where, you know, like over-the-counter cough medication, they just don't work. You know, they really don't, but some people really believe they do, and so it gives a patient something to do as long as it's not harmful. So there might be something like that. There's an over-the-counter medication or some sort of topical medication. The doctor is like, it's probably not going to help that much, but they know that they just need time and that patient's going to get better. But in general, doctors don't give placebo.
What about cough drops?
I mean, I think they make your mouth moist. I don't really say, I mean, maybe the menthol is soothing, but most over-the-counter products are a lot, I should say, especially for colds, they don't do anything.
Gotcha. Good to know.
Yeah.
All right. It's really about what you believe, what you're focused on.
Yeah.
Okay. So if I believe that cough drop is going to facilitate healing, it just might.
It just might, yeah.
All right. Well, we're just about out of time. So glad you're with us today. A little information for you on the placebo effect. Now it's time to get out there, be a source of kindness, be a source of contribution. You have something this world needs, and we believe in you.